So even Lindsey Graham can't fully defend the new voting changes in Georgia, which make, among other things, it illegal for people to be given food and water if they're waiting in line to vote. He said so on Fox News this morning with Chris Wallace.
This is the one that I think is creating the biggest fuss. It prohibits, it makes it a crime to give food or drink to voters waiting in line. Senator, why on earth, if Americans are willing to wait in hours to vote, would you make it a crime for people to come and give them a bottle of water?
Well, all I can say is that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I agree with you there. But in Georgia, you had an explosion of mail-in balloting.
And so Chris Wallace, he's actually pretty fired up there, basically saying that, look, it's already ridiculous that people have to wait in line for so long. It seems pretty vindictive and kind of cruel, really, that you're going to go to those people waiting in really long lines and then saying, hey, it's illegal for someone to bring you a granola bar or an apple or a banana or whatever, right? Like, that seems pretty cruel. And all Lindsey Graham can say there is, well, I don't know much about that. I don't really support that. And then he goes on to defend the broader bill. And I don't play that for you because I don't want to amplify Graham's misinformation and disinformation, because the reality is Georgia voting is a success story as it is. It is one of the few southern states that has really amplified voter turnout among minorities, and that's a historic success. And so Georgia, up until this, actually had a lot to brag about. They had a state where voter turnout was rising election after election after election. But of course, that's the problem for Republicans. Black people voting and having the audacity to win, as I've been noting. But this is where I think this sort of provision may have been put there on purpose. And what I mean by that is that this food and water thing may be there to be taken out. This is something that I've sort of started to think about over the past couple days. What that means basically is that you craft this voter rights bill that basically takes away voting rights from a lot of people, black people in particular, black people and urban voters in particular. You make it harder for them to vote. And if you do that, you increase your likelihood that your rural white base will have their votes weighted more, essentially, and you'll win close elections. And Georgia is likely to have a lot of close elections going forward as the state becomes a purple state when it used to be a more fully red state. And so you say to people, look, we have less drop boxes, less early voting, and we also have this water and food illegal part of it. And so that part's the cruelest high profile part. Then you can say, when people call that out, including Republicans like Lindsey Graham, somebody who directly tried to interfere in the Georgia election days after it happened, calling Georgia officials saying you should just as en masse throw out mail-in ballots from certain counties. That's what he said. Even he is opposing this part of the bill, all so that they could take it out and leave the rest. That's something to look out for here. You're going to see a potential move by Republicans nationally and in Georgia to start criticizing this particular part of the bill, to say, look, we understand that we maybe went a bit too far, so out of generosity and compromise, we're going to make it legal again to give people food and water at polling stations and leaving the rest of it intact. They can look like they compromised when the most damaging parts of the bill are still intact. That is a potential outcome here. But make no mistake, this is still bad. You know why they did it? They wanted to incentivize making lines even longer. Raphael Warnock has talked about this, right? You want to make it so that black grandmothers not only have to wait in line, but you want to starve them while they're waiting in line. Like, that's the point here. But don't forget that Republicans want to try and look reasonable. So Lindsey Graham is going to spin this as him saying, I've made good faith criticisms of the Georgia voting bill, even though I agree with it in large. And if they take that part out, he's going to say that he's a moderate compromiser. But don't forget that just because this part might get the most attention, there's a lot of evil in this bill. They're not just trying to starve grandma waiting in line. They don't want her voting at all.